Hey guys, just saw a question from Peter about keyword research in the group, and so I thought I'd dive into it. I think there's a lot of ways to do keyword research wrong, and it's quite a confusing topic because there are a lot of ways to do it in a lot of different scenarios. So I'm just going to break down my thoughts on it, and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. So let's start off with what Google. Well, let's start off with what we're doing the keyword research for. So I think it's important to have a goal and know what we're aiming towards. And when I started doing very well with SEO, I started thinking, what does Google want me to do? Because we're really just doing SEO for Google if we're making websites and optimizing Google business profiles, right? So the first thing that I know Google wants is they want us to build authority, trust, relevance, show expertise, and those are the main things that Google wants us to do. However, the way that we approach building keywords for an already known brand that Google already trusts, it already has authority, is very different to how we would build keywords for a business that doesn't have any of those already. Google doesn't know what the business is relevant to. It doesn't know anything about the business. And so really when we're starting to build a new company, we're creating a new website, we're launching a new domain, the main goal is just, in my opinion, the main goal is just to let Google know that we want to be relevant to certain terms and that we're building authority in certain terms. And so the way we do that is we communicate extremely clearly to Google what specific terms we want to show up for. And so the best way, in my opinion, to do that is to go onto Google's keyword planner, see what people are actually typing in, which is the only place you can do it. There's no other keyword tool, unless they pull directly from Google's keyword planner, which most of them don't. No other keyword tool has that information, and the best part is that information is completely free. So if we look on Google keyword planner and we see what people are typing in, we get exactly what keywords we want to show up and be relevant for, and that's step one. So if we target those keywords on a Google business profile, if we target the services that people type in there, if we add those keywords directly to our website, then Google's going to see us as relevant for those search terms, and that's step one. Now we can start building authority. So once Google knows we're relevant, now we start building authority and trust by adding reviews. Whenever we get reviews coming in, we add them to the website. Whenever we get awards, whenever we apply for something like BBB in America and get accepted and get a rating, we can put that on the website and we can show that we have authority and we're building trust in our local community. Anytime that we sponsor events, anything like that, we can add that to the website. But really the base is relevance first, because if Google doesn't know what we're relevant for, then they just won't show us for search terms. Google will just be confused. So relevance is number. I'll give you a very clear example on that. So when I first started doing SEO, it was because I got a new client who was an electrician, and they already were working with an SEO company. They weren't getting any leads at all from anywhere. I started running the ads, nothing was coming in, and so I was very confused because my systems and processes were working for another company at the time. This was my second or third client. I think it was second client doing Google Ads. And so I was very confused. I started looking into SEO, looking into their Google business profile specifically, and I found that they weren't listed as an electrician on Google. Their primary category was as a electrical installation service, which is different from an electrician. And I looked up on Google Keyword Planner what people search for when looking for an electrician, and the main search term was electrician by far. People don't search for an electrical installation service, barely anyone, maybe 100 times less people. And so Google just didn't know that these guys were an electrician. And so when I ran the ads, Google wasn't sure they were an electrician, so it would just give us an extremely poor rating and never want to show the ads, right? Because why would it? It wants people to have a good customer experience, good user experience on Google. And so the only change I did for them was say, let me take over the Google business profile. I changed the keyword from electrical installation service to electrician, and within a week, they were getting 1 to 3 calls a day just from the Google business profile. The ads were not running. And so that change just highlighted to me so clearly that relevance when you're starting is just so important. Google needs to know what you're doing, and it needs to be very specific. Otherwise, they just don't know what your business does, and so they won't want to rank you for any of the search terms, even if you're making blogs and you're making content and you're running ads for, you know, relevant things. If your core isn't strong on the website, Google's just not going to see you as relevant. So that's where I always start. And so once you've gone for relevance, that's when you can branch out to doing other things like writing blog posts on specific topics, answering questions when you search on Google, you know, seeing what questions people are answering, or using websites. I've got one here, like, where is it? I've got too many tools, but there's websites where you can use to basically answer questions. I think it's on my different browser, but yeah, so we basically, you know, we can branch out and have those advanced topics which show more authority, show more expertise in lots of areas once we have built authority. And then once your brand's big enough, then you don't even really need the relevant keywords anymore on your website, because Google knows what you do. You might have looked up and, you know, seen these really big brands and noticed, hey, these guys don't have any of the relevant keywords on their website. They just can use, like, you know, terms which sell an outcome. You know, like Apple might use, like, you know, think different on their website. They don't say anything about phones, right? They don't need to say anything about mobile devices in their header tags or the H2s anymore. They can just, you know, talk about outcomes, which is the ultimate form of sales, and so it's like, well, if Apple doesn't have to do it, why do I have to do it? And that's the reason, is because Apple's already built relevance to Google. Google already knows everything about Apple, everything about its customers, because it already has, you know, 100% relevance. And so until we have that, we just have to really focus building up relevance. And so I don't think it's very unlikely a service business will ever get enough customers to move away from relevance. Maybe we're talking about the businesses that get to the 50s, 100 million in revenue, where they're, you know, brands across the whole of a country like America. Then Google will have enough information to be able to say, okay, this business is relevant for all these search terms. I actually think it's quite, like, that's how big you need to be in order to, like, get 100% relevance and start moving into different keyword search terms. So for a lot of small businesses, we don't even need to worry about it. We just stick with relevance. And we're definitely past the stage of just keyword spamming everywhere as well. There's definitely a level to it where you want the keywords in your, you know, meta title, your H1 and your H2s, but everywhere else, that's the main points of relevance that I found that Google looks towards. You don't really need any more relevant terms than those. So you can put, you know, other interesting content in your descriptions and body text and things like that. But that's all I found. Like, because Google does check the website, it is ranking it for their EEAT framework, and if you've just got keyword spamming in the text everywhere, then you'll just get a low rank for that as well. So there definitely is, like, a delicate balance between aiming for high relevance but not aiming for, like, spammy relevance as well. Yeah, so if you're wondering where I did learn this stuff, like, I'm just so, I mean, I feel like a lot of people that do SEO just talk out of their arse a lot. So if you're wondering where I did learn this stuff, and I think some really good resources for this are, if you go to BrightLocal is a really good resource. They have, like, a really good course on SEO there. You can learn a lot about SEO from this. Most of the content, I'd say 90% of it, is very, very good. There's some things that are kind of on the edge where it doesn't really matter, but they'll say it like it does, which is a lot of what SEO people do. And then another one you can look at is there's this Whitespark one here. So I would highly recommend reading through these local ranking factors from Whitespark, because basically they'll show you what are the most important factors for ranking on a map pack. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, your primary Google Business Profile category is the most relevant or highest ranking thing on the map pack. So if this is wrong, then it's likely that Google is going to be confused as to what you do. And so you can go through this list and see, I basically will go through the top 25 for each company and just make sure that all of these are perfect. And that's part of what we do in the group as well with our tool. We're making sure that all of these things are perfect. And yeah, so what else we got? So yeah, that was another one. And then the other one that I use a lot now is Search Atlas. So what makes Search Atlas really good is that they're kind of like an aggregator service where you use them to do your SEO, but they also do data analytics on the service that they provide. Basically what Service Atlas does is that you can install it on your website and it will check all of your different SEO optimization elements like your meta tags, your titles, and just make sure that they are in line with best practice. And the way that they make sure they're in line with best practices, every time they add something as a service to check on their website, they're basically testing that across everyone that's using Search Atlas. So as far as I'm aware, they're one of the only, well actually I think Ahrefs does something similar to this as well, but they're basically checking, hey, if we change this, say if we change a header tag to this format or to have these types of keywords to be written in this way, how does that impact our rankings? And so they're doing that across, tens of thousands of websites. And so they get a really good insight into how to best, how to best do certain SEO elements, like how to best do how to format an H1 element, if that makes sense. So it's just a really good tool for understanding how to do SEO on your website as well. And so combining this with BrightLocal and the Whitespark rankings, you can get a really clear picture of how you should actually do SEO on your website. And then there's a bunch of other things that are like very, very in depth for SEO, which as long as you're doing the main core stuff, they're really in things. I mean, they're good to do, but it's not as important as just having a very strong foundation, because most businesses, like I'd say 99% of businesses just don't have good SEO. More than that, 99.99 don't have the basics done. And so if you just do the basics, then you'll get good results for your clients. If you work with clients, or good results for your own business. And the basics are very easy to do when you're building an AI website like we're doing in the group as well. So very long answer, but hopefully that gave you guys some good insight into how I think about SEO.